Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome on this wonderful, cold Saturday morning. My name is Bridget Harrison. I am one of your co-chairs, as well as Christian Gilligan, and we are happy to talk to you today about interviewing and writing. Next slide. So just a little roadmap of what we're going to be doing. The first is we're going to be going over legal writing tips, followed by interviewing tips and tricks. We'll give everyone a break after that, and then we will move on to our question and answer section with Tyler Hopkins, who is a former MCP participant. All right, so the legal writing one-on-one session, we're going to talk to you about how you could do well in your legal writing this summer and hopefully beyond as legal practitioners. Next slide, please. So the first step in successful legal writing is make sure that you understand what your supervisor, your partner, or whomever is asking you for the writing product wants from you, and make sure that you're giving them a useful work product to use. And you do that by doing the following. Make sure that your writing product is clear and concise. You want to quickly identify the issues. You want to make sure you're researching the issues thoroughly, you're analyzing the issues completely, and that you're applying your research to the facts. And ultimately, your job is to answer the legal question that is posed in a clear, structured, and complete, concise manner. After you've submitted your legal writing, it is your job to follow up and ask for feedback. And here's how you do that. A few days after you've submitted your legal writing, you want to send an email and ask to set up a time to discuss this with your supervisor. Now, we know as clerks, the supervisors are going to be more amenable to setting up this time for you. They're going to take the initiative to make sure that they're sitting down with you and giving you feedback. However, in regular practice, it's on you. You have the onus to make sure you're reaching out and soliciting feedback. So we're just trying to get you in the habit and being prepared that you might be the one to have to reach out and ask for feedback on your work product. Next slide, please. All right. So you get an assignment. What do you do first? Well, the first thing you do is say yes to the project. During the summer, this is your opportunity to learn, to get experience, to get exposed to various areas of the law. So you want to make sure that you're saying yes to the project. Now, we understand there are times where you might have too many assignments at once, or you're kind of overloaded. And that's something that you can definitely discuss with your supervising attorney. But let's make the assumption now that you're going to take on as much work as you physically, mentally can to make sure you're getting the experience. So after you get to the assignment, I highly recommend doing these things. One, you want to take a notebook or a pen and make sure that you're able to write down information, or some type of laptop. Yes, you will be receiving this email, this PowerPoint afterwards, or some type of laptop so you can write down this information. So the first thing you want to ask is, what's the factual background? Who are the parties involved? And what is the issue or question that you're being asked to answer? Then you want to ask, well, what type of work product am I expected to produce? Should this be an email, or is this an informal internal memo, or is this a formal memo that needs to be going out to the client or the firm? Or the organization. So you want to make sure you're clear as to what type of work product you're expected to produce. Next, you want to ask, is there some type of legal source that they recommend you starting with? Maybe they have an article, a case, or a past decision that is a great starting point for you to have. So you want to ask that. Next, you want to ask, well, what is the jurisdiction? Is this a national case? Is this state? Is this local? Make sure you understand the purview and the parameters of the assignment. Then you want to ask, what is this being used for? Is this being used for just informational purposes for your supervising attorney? Is this an internal memo only, or is this going out to the client? And that might inform how you actually draft and put together the work product. I would switch the order of these last two bullets. The first one, I would ask, what is the deadline? What is my timeline for producing this product? And when is it due by? Are there any checkpoints in between that you want to meet with me to sort of get an understanding of where I am and where I'm going? That will help inform how much time you need to be spending on it, and how to reprioritize and prioritize things as they come. And then in real practice, I don't typically ask how many times it should take. I calculate how much time it should take based off of my competing priorities or the deadline that's given. But I would say as a clerk, that is a question that is definitely appropriate. How much time should this assignment take? And ultimately, you want to always ask follow-up questions during the process, after the process, and then some, because you don't want to start on the assignment and not be clear and produce something that's not what the partner wants. So you want to make sure that you are always asking follow-up questions to make sure that you're producing the work product that's expected of you. Next slide, please. So the time to research and outline. So you want to make sure when you're doing your research and writing that you are using the appropriate sources. Those could be Westlaw or Lexis or secondary sources such as Google or articles, textbooks, newspapers, what have you. I always start my legal research with a Google search just to see if there's anything out there to sort of frame what the question is and what the answer is that I'm trying to get to. And then I move on to my legal research in LexisNexis. You could be using Boolean searching. So I had to look this up. This is when you use words such as and, or, not in the LexisNexis search bar, so that you're eliminating some terms that you don't want or including some terms that you want. For example, you can say, I want research relating to mergers and acquisitions, or I want research that has mergers but not acquisitions. So those are some research techniques that you can use. You also want to make sure that you are keeping a running list of the sources of research that you're referencing in case you have to go back or you have to cite or you have to provide it to someone else. So what I usually do is I have sort of a chart or a template that I have listed, I got, this is the case name, these are the parties involved, and I got it from LexisNexis, or this is the article that I've gotten, here's the website, here are the authors, to make sure that that's organized in a concise, clear way, so that if you have to go back to it or you have to cite to it, you know where you found it. Make sure you're not neglecting bad authority. We all have cases that might not align with our position, but we need to make sure that we can point those out to our supervisors or put them in the memo so that we're not surprised when opposing counsel brings them up. And we need to be able to distinguish how our position is more favorable from those negative authorities in our writing or in our discussions with our supervisor. So make sure you do not ignore bad authority. Then you want to make sure, again, the same thing that you're doing with your sources, you're outlining your research so that you have sort of a roadmap as to where the your answer is going to be. And then ultimately you want to pick a side. In law school, we're taught, it depends, but in real practice, people are asking you questions because they want the answer and they want to be able to solve a problem or to provide this answer to their client. So the middle of the road is okay. You can say yes, probably, or most likely no, but you need to have a definitive answer, because your job as the attorney, as the law clerk, is to solve the problem. Next slide, please. So for formatting, it's always good to ask if there's a past example. In real practice, I do that all the time. For instance, yesterday I had to file a motion for remand to have a case sent back from the Court of Claims back to me so that I could research it. And so I asked my supervisor or my coworkers or peers for an example of a past motion for remand template that I could use. A lot of firms and organizations also have a database of past work products that you can use, revise, update, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So ask for examples or samples when possible. When you are doing your writing, make sure that you're using headings, bullets, so that people can follow along with where you're going and what is being presented. So at the top, you want to have the question presented, then you want to follow it by a brief answer, have the facts, the discussion, which is the analysis, and then your conclusion. The same things that you learn in law school, the IRAC method, which is the issue at the top, what's the legal matter at hand, the rule, which is the law that you're going to be using, the analysis, which is applying your facts to the rule or the law, and then ultimately the conclusion. Here's the answer: yes, this, or no, that. Or I think it should be CREACE method, which is very similar to IRAC. It's the conclusion followed by the rule, the explanation, which is your facts, and the application, which is the law, and then the conclusion. And then when doing this writing, you want to make sure that you have, again, introduction paragraphs, a roadmap to make sure that your supervisor or whomever you're providing the work product to has an idea of where to find the answer, where your analysis was, and then where the conclusion is. Always when you're doing these writings, you want to proofread. If possible, ask another clerk to proofread it for you. I take the approach of reading my work out loud to make sure I don't have grammatical or spelling errors. Maybe catch that I've said the twice in the sentence, read it backwards, but make sure that your work is as close to perfection and polished as possible. Now, we understand we all have spelling errors, we all have grammatical errors in our work, but if you can minimize them by reading out loud, taking your time, slowing down, you should do so. And then once you have written it, once you have your headings, your roadmap, your conclusions, you want to look at it and say, is this easy to use? Because again, a partner doesn't want a 20-page memo for an answer. They want to be able to quickly read what you said, look at the analysis, and be able to use it. Maybe it's something that they want to easily be able to forward on to the client, or maybe it's something that they want to easily be able to digest to be able to give advice to someone. So you want to make sure that your work product is easy to use. And then you want to attach the main sources that you use for your writing. So attach the cases that you've relied upon. And when sending that email with the work product to the partner or to your supervising attorney or to your peer, you want to have a short synopsis of what this memo is about, what this writing product is about. So I want to take a pause here before I get into emails, because I am going rather quickly to see, does anyone have any questions about writing a memo or writing any type of formal work product for their employer? Okay, I have a question from Diego. Could you distinguish a brief answer from the email synopsis? It honestly is very similar. So I have an example of what I've done for an opinion I wrote at the AG's office. And basically, the brief answer is my synopsis. It is, yes, the county agency has the authority to execute leases for wells because of A, B, and C. And that is the same type of synopsis that you would put in the email to your supervisor. So that's a good question. You're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions about legal writing or memos? Okay, so we'll move on to writing emails while at work. Same thing applies. You want to make sure that you're proofreading your emails. If that is taking time after you've written it to stop and read it out loud, then do so, because you want to make sure that you are showing up as professional and as polished as possible during this summer clerkship. Be mindful of the reply alls. I was on an email 2 days ago that went out to 200 and some people, and 3 people chose to reply all day. I don't understand why they didn't see that they're replying to everyone on that chain, but they just didn't. So you want to make sure that you are replying just to the sender and not replying to the entire organization. It happens, but we want to minimize that. In the subject line, you want to make sure that it's meaningful and that the person knows what it's about. I was in a conference last week talking with a CEO of an organization. They get bombarded with 200, 300 emails a day. So you want to make sure the subject clearly says what it is so that they can briefly skim it and see, is this something I need to respond to now, or can this wait later? So for example, for my motion to remand that I had to send out, I wrote motion to remand for case number XYZ. So I could clearly let the people who are getting the email know this is important, this is what this is about, and they can move on with their day. A helpful tip is to fill out the 2 lines. So whoever the email is going to and addressed to last, go ahead and write the whole email, proofread it, and then right before you push send, you put in the people who are supposed to be getting the email. We do advise that you avoid using text lingo in your professional formal emails. Don't use TXT, is that, or TX, whatever thanks is, because I mean, some people don't know what that is, or BRB. Just go ahead and write it out. Be right back. You know, this is a professional setting. You're not texting your boss. You want to come off as polished, professional, and someone that you know, understands the audience that they're speaking with. So this is something that Abby and I, the past co-chair, talked about, is filling out your colleagues beforehand. So how I address people when I initially meet them, for like, for example, for Christian, I would say, Mr. Gilligan, XYZ, as we've developed a more collegial relationship, you know, we're on a first name basis. So now he addresses emails to Brigitte and I'll do Christian. And so that's something that you can just feel out. And oftentimes I find, you know, if I say Mr. XYZ, then they'll say, hey, please just call me Jim. And so then moving forward, I'll call them Jim. So that's just a trick and tip that I have used in my professional relationships. And then last, for email research assignments, make sure that you're still following the same outlines and structure as in your memo. You want to be using headings. You want to be bolding things. You want to be using bullets. Oh, that is a great question. If you don't know their pronouns, what you should do. I hadn't thought about that. Christian, do you have a tip for that?
Typically I will just use first name if I don't know pronoun.
Okay. Yes. See, I'm learning something. So yeah, I would say that if in this climate, probably using the first name would be best. The only thing that I would say is if they have some type of title like doctor, I would use that. But that's a good question. Another thing I've seen is a lot of people's email signatures do have their pronouns in it. So if they have the pronouns in it, then you could go back to using the Miss or Mr. But great question. Okay, next slide. So we've provided two emails here, the one on the left and the one on the right, for you to look through and compare. So how many of you would say that, well, go ahead, let's use the chat feature. Which number one being the one on the left and number two being the one on the right, which one do you think looks more professional? Go ahead and put your answer in the chat. Okay, great. So I'm seeing a lot of twos. And I would agree with that. Yes, number two is very, it is professional and it sets forth what this is about. So instead of just saying subpoena research, you're saying XYZ or the specific case that the subpoena research is for. You see that Abby has had an introduction into what this email is about or who the parties involved are. There are numbers to clearly define what the answer is. And then she uses bold to break apart, the objective of the subpoena, try to limit the response and motion to quash. And then at the end says, please let me know if you follow up. Please let me know if you have any follow-up questions. So yes, I would recommend using format number 2 for your professional emails this summer and beyond. Okay, again, this is an interactive session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and Christian and I will address them. But I'll turn it over to Christian for the next half of our presentation.
Okay, if no questions on the legal writing tips, we'll move on to the interviewing tips and tricks. Again, good morning. My name is Christian Gellikin. I'm an associate at Bailey Cavallari. I went through the MCP program during law school, so really glad to be here. Really excited for you guys and your opportunities to interview with all the employers this year. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the interviewing process and the timeline. We will give you an overview of all the important dates at the end, but the first thing to watch for is your interview notifications. These will go out via email on Monday, January 31st, 2022. So please watch. All interviews will be will take place via Zoom. Please monitor your emails on the 31st. Donna Sweet will send one email notification with your interview schedule and a Zoom link, and no subsequent follow-up emails. It's your responsibility to make it to your interview. And if you have not received an email by 8 a.m. on February 2nd, then please email Donna Sweet. The interviews themselves will take place on Thursday and Friday, February 3rd through 4th from 2 to 5 p.m. They're set up like OCI style. They're quick interviews. There will be 20-minute interviews. And in between your interviews, you will be in Zoom breakout rooms. There's usually one or two interviewers for each employer, but we almost never know ahead of time. And we recommend that you please research the organization that you're interviewing with, the type of work they do, and all that ahead of time. Some recommendations for your interview content. First, it's okay to use examples from your non-legal life experience. At this point, many of you may not have had a legal job, so it's okay to use examples from your previous non-legal jobs or your personal life. Please know your resume, but don't read it. If something is on your resume, be prepared to talk about it and answer questions about it. Please also have a few questions prepared for your employer. Remember, you're also interviewing them, and most employers will ask if you have questions at the end. When you ask questions for the employer, it shows that you're interested and you're well prepared for the interview. Also, please remember that the interview is a professional conversation. And finally, be personable. The goal is to show the employer that they want to work with you. Now let's talk about interviewing on Zoom. Before your interview, please make sure that your camera, microphone, and Wi-Fi are working. We'll talk about some tips for your background, lighting, and filter, but please dress professionally and check everything that is visible in the video, and stay off mute during your interview. So the next few slides will give some tips on background and camera for Zoom interviews. First, here are some common lighting issues. This is what not to do. As you'll see in the first picture, it is backlit. There's too much lighting coming from behind the individual. The second picture, there's harsh shadows. There's too much lighting coming from one side of the individual. Third picture, there's way too much lighting just directly in front of the individual. And the last picture, the picture is underlit. So these are things not to do. Regarding your background, again, things not to do. Please do not have a ton of stuff visible in your background. This is distracting for the interviewer. And this is what your video should look like. The key is to have good lighting. So having the lighting source directly in front of you, but not too much. And also you want to have a neutral background.
Record.
And position the camera straight on you and fill the frame. This is what your picture should look like. Some additional tips. We recommend that you write a thank you note to your interviewers. So please ask for their names and contact information during your interview. Please also talk to your professors if you need to miss class for any of your interviews. Be early for your interview, and again, test your technology ahead of time. I see that there's a question that came through. If we have a class conflict at the time of our interview, is it possible to switch times with someone who may have an interview with the same organization at a different time? The answer
Krishna?
is no. Yep,
Yeah,
Donna.
I'll jump in and say no, no, because it's not just that organization. That individual may have an interview with someone else at the same time.
Okay. Another question. Do you have any examples of good questions students can ask employers? So some of the things that I asked were directly related to the type of work that the employer does that I would be interested in doing. So that was a question that I would ask. I would also ask just casual questions like, what does your day, a typical day for you look like? And what type of candidate are you looking for to hire? But also know what type of, law they practice, if it's multiple things within the firm, and try to hone in on a specific area that you want to practice in and ask questions about that area. Any other questions at the moment? Please feel free to put them in the chat. So, and one thing I would mention, so Zach says turnaround time between interview period and offer period seems kind of tight. You recommend sending a thank you email instead, or is a physical thank you card preferable? So what is included on this slide too is that please do not contact the employers until Thursday, February 17th. However, I think an email thank you is just fine, but we actually, please do not contact anyone between the interview period and the offer period. So a question, if an interview time doesn't work due to a class commitment, should we contact Donna Sweet? Donna, is it possible for them to reschedule interview times?
Unfortunately, it's really not, and I know that's puts some folks in a tough situation, but it's kind of one of the reasons that we mentioned early on to please, get with your professors. Most are very understanding if you're out interviewing for a clerkship, but unfortunately, with 30 employers and multiple interviews, the employers have blocked off the time slots, and we just really don't have the ability to juggle interview times. And the other thing is, as someone mentioned in that other question, the turnaround time between when you folks have your interviews and when the employers have to make the offers is very small as well, very tight turnaround. So we can't even try to push to another day. So unfortunately, once you get your schedule, it's pretty well set. You know, and I should say too, with this, I've worked with this program kind of on and off for, oh gosh, 20 years. It's been a long time. But I would say I've never had a situation where a professor was unwilling to allow a student to miss because they were, you know, interviewing for this program. So I do think most of your professors will be very understanding.
I think that's right. Any other questions at the moment? Oh, looks like, feels like a silly question, but between the offer period and non-contact bullets, we can contact to accept an offer, correct? That will actually be, the offers will be accepted through Donna, correct?
Yes, that's correct. You won't talk directly to your employer. You'll actually get your offer from me, and then you will either accept or decline back through me. So you will not contact employers to accept or to decline or anything like that until once you've accepted an offer after February 17th. That's when you'll be able to reach out to the employer to say, hey, I'm so excited to be joining you this summer. But nothing until that point, and all contact about the offers goes through me.
Thank you. Just to clarify, we shouldn't send a thank you email until Thursday, the 17th. I believe that's correct, Donna. We don't want any contact until after the 17th.
So I have a little bit different interpretation of that, and Christian and Brigitte,
Okay.
you know, definitely jump in. My understanding in the past was the contact with the employers was really not contacting them to talk about the job. So not contacting them to accept or decline, not contacting them to ask any questions or any follow-up questions about the offer, but that a thank you note, just thanking them for the interview, is absolutely fine. But just nothing beyond that thank you for interviewing me.
Understood. So that was my apologies. I misspoke earlier. So you can send a thank you note prior to February 17th. Another question, should we still send a thank you note for offers we reject, or is that approaching a sensitive topic? I think as just a common courtesy, if you just thank them for the interview, that's probably the best thing to do. Wouldn't recommend following up on, you know, offers that you reject, Donna, unless you have a different view there.
Yeah, I think you're right on target. I think it still is great to send them a thank you note, you know, right after the interview. But, you know, kind of nothing beyond that. But even the folks where you end up not accepting an offer, I think it's still great to send a thank you, because one thing about our legal community here in Columbus is it's relatively small, and people talk and people move around a lot and take different jobs. And so you never know, the offer that you reject today, the person you interviewed with might be working for someplace else in the future where you'd like to work. So just the fact that they know that, hey, that person followed up and thanked me for the interview, I know I remember them, I think will serve you well going forward. So I think it's a great idea to send a thank you note to everybody you interview with, even if you walked away from the interview thinking, gosh, that may not be a place I want to go. Even if I get an offer, I don't know if that's a good fit for me. I think the thank you note's still really valuable.
I was just gonna add, I think that some of these are stylistic questions and preference. So definitely, I think sending a thank you email after you interview is appropriate and advisable, because they might not get the physical note in the mail before they make their offer. But the sending a note after you've rejected an offer, I think that's a stylistic preference as to whether or not you're comfortable in doing that.
Okay. All great points. Another question, will we receive all offers at once? What if we are waiting on an offer from a particular employer? Donna, I believe offers are received one at a time.
That's correct. That's correct. So you will not receive all the offers at once. You will get one at a time. And this, again, is a tight turnaround. You'll have 24 hours to accept or decline that offer. And that is a tough question. You know, what if you have a particular employer on your list and you really want to work for them, so you're kind of waiting to see if you get an offer from them. That's a tough spot, kind of the same as what happens out there. You know, once you get out of law school, sometimes you just got to make the decision and go with it. So it's really a gamble. If you get an offer in the first round of offers and it's not the employer you were hoping for, really going to be a personal choice as to whether you reject that and kind of hold out to see if you get the offer from your first choice employer, or if you want to go ahead and accept that first offer that you received. So that is a tough question. It's a tough spot, but definitely, I guess my advice, this is just kind of how I am as a person. I probably wouldn't gamble and wait for somebody, but everybody's situation is a little bit different, and you have to evaluate that, kind of based on your own plans and your own needs and summer.
Okay, I got some good questions here. Will you be able to inform us how many offers we have prior to us accepting / rejecting one? It's just one offer at a time. So you will only have one offer per student, or per each employer puts out one offer. And if that student rejects, then it'll go to a different student. So you don't have multiple offers pending, you just have one offer at a time.
And we won't let you know, for example, okay, you have 6 offers or you have 3 offers, because there's a strong likelihood, even if you interviewed with 6 employers and all 6 wanted to make you an offer, there's a strong likelihood that in that first round, someone else is going to take one of the other positions. So I wouldn't recommend, even if you knew, wow, I aced all these interviews, everybody's going to make me an offer. I wouldn't recommend kind of banking on that, because they're interviewing other folks and somebody else might accept their offer. I see another question here, Christian, that kind of came in between the last two. Are the 6 employers that we selected the only employers that will see our application materials, or is this information sent to all employers? That's a great question. Your application material only goes to the employers that you selected.
Any other questions? Let's see if I can. Okay, so picking up on the selection process, talked about some of this stuff, but so after the interview, the selection process is like med school matching. You selected 6 employers first on your application. They review and select 6 students they wish to interview. The employer conducts the 6 interviews, and they make offers from the 6 interviewed. Maybe to all, maybe to some. You receive an offer and make the final selection, and the offer is accepted. During the offer period, that happens after your interview occurs. This is February 10th, which is a Thursday, through Monday, February 14th. You will receive your offer via email. You must respond within 24 hours to accept your offer. This is a hard deadline. The timing for each offer can be different. You may not receive an offer at the same time as others. And as we discuss, you may send thank you cards after your interviews, but please do not contact employers about employment related issues until Thursday, February 17th. Okay, so let's go over an overview of the interview timeline dates. So again, Monday, January 31st is when you'll receive an email notification about your interview times. Thursday and Friday, February 3rd and 4th are the interviews on Zoom from 2 to 5. The offer period lasts from Thursday, February 10th through Monday, February 14th. You must respond within 24 hours to accept your offer. And the offer period includes the weekend, of course, so please be prepared to check your emails and respond on Saturday and Sunday if necessary. Offers will be completed on Wednesday, February 16th, and you can contact employers on Thursday, February 17th. Let's see here.
Christian, if I could just kind of
Yes.
throw in just so everybody knows, I will also let you all know once all the rounds are complete. So it's possible that, you know, it'll only go to maybe a couple of rounds and all the jobs will be filled. Everybody will be really excited about their offers and accept, and will be done, you know, on Friday. So I will let you know once all jobs are filled and everything's completed, so that you don't have to sit around and watch for emails in the event that there, you know, won't be any more coming out.
Thank you, Donna. Okay. Are there any questions about the interviews? Any additional questions?
I did want to just add one thing. I know we've gone over tips, but make sure that when you're interviewing, we know they're over Zoom, but that you're in professional clothing as though you're in in-person interviews. And that your camera's on.
And I also want to let you know, and I don't know exactly, you know, which students this will apply to yet, but I just don't want anybody to be surprised. I do have one employer that is planning on sending 4 folks for their interview panel. And as I think Christian and Brigitte said earlier, most employers will only send 1 or 2 folks to do the interviews, but I have one employer this year that is planning to send a group of 4. So don't be surprised if you go in that room and have 4 people. I see another question there, Christian. I don't know if you see this. Will you let us know when the last round happens if we have an offer that period, or is that something you don't know beforehand? Yes, we'll let you know when we get to the last rounds. We'll let you know if there's anything, or I'll let you know kind of what's going on in the process and where you are in the process. Absolutely.
Feel free to keep asking questions in the chat. Just looking out for any more before we take a break.
I see another great question in there, Christian. When will we be notified if no one selects us to interview? I don't expect that to happen. I certainly hope that won't happen, but I'll let you know, right away. So you will know at the beginning of the first round if no one selects you to interview. I'll send you an email.
Okay, I don't see any others coming through, but I may be missing them. Donna, do you see any others?
I am taking a quick look. I see one that just popped in. How many rounds are there? That's a terrific question, and that depends. That depends on how fast people accept offers. So while I've never seen this happen in all the years I've been associated with the program, certainly it is possible that there'll be one round and that's it. You know, we could send out offers to everyone. Everyone could accept that first round, and everything could be, all jobs could be filled at that point. It's more likely that it will go 2 to 3 rounds. That's usually about the norm, somewhere in that 2 to 3. It could go as many as 6, but I don't believe I've ever seen that happen.
Okay, I'll do one last call for questions and we'll do a break until 10 a.m. Any other questions at the moment?
And during the break, I'll stay here online as well. So if anyone has a question you want to send me privately in the chat during the break, feel free to.
Okay, let's take a break until 10 a.m. We'll be on, but we will start the question and answer session with Tyler Hopkins at 10. All right, I think we can get started with the next portion. Donna and Brigitte, I believe you guys are back on.
I think we need to clarify one of the questions that was asked.
Sure.
Donna, did you want to pop on?
Yeah, it was my information in the chat, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to clarify something because we did answer a question and we didn't give you quite the right answer. So someone asked, will you receive multiple offers at once? And we said no. That is actually not the correct answer. It is possible that you will receive multiple offers at once. You're not going to receive all the offers that you get in the same one round packet, but for each round, for example, if you were the first choice for 4 employers, you are going to receive all 4 of those offers in that first round. So I know that can be a little bit confusing, but I wanted to clarify that for everybody. So it is possible that you might receive multiple offers in one email from me. But that's probably most likely to happen in that first round. And as the rounds move on, you know, it's more likely to go down to only 1 offer at a time. So just shoot me a chat if you have any questions about that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Donna. I appreciate it. And Tyler, are you on?
I think Tyler
Go
is
ahead and
here.
unmute. So Tyler, can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yes, I can. Thank you for joining us this morning. As we said, Tyler Hopkins went through the MCP program recently, and we just wanted to ask him a few questions about the interview process. So we'll just get started with that. So Tyler, thank you for joining us. First question is, how was the virtual interview process for you?
So the virtual interview process for me, it was pretty good. I had kind of gotten used to, you know, being on Zoom all the time because most of my semester for my 1L year was online. I will say interviewing is a lot different than being on class. So sometimes you're just kind of thrown into a room where people are already talking and they don't necessarily see you. So there is, like, I guess, an awkward moment at first, but overall, after my first interview, I kind of just got used to it and it went pretty seamlessly.
Great. Yeah, I think we've all gotten used to Zoom at this point, so hopefully, it'll be the same for most of the other students here. How did you prepare for your interview?
So how I prepared for my interview, I guess first I kind of, just went and searched as much as I could about each employer that I was interviewing with. Um, Personally, I kind of picked, I guess, a certain practice area that the firm offered and kind of, that I was interested in and kind of read up on that just to, if I was asked why I was applying to a particular firm, I would have an answer. Um, the one thing that I did not do that I wish I had done was, especially for larger firms, I didn't necessarily look at what practice area was necessarily here in Columbus. So there was one specific interview where there was a practice area that I was really interested in, and I brought it up in the interview, and then they said, "Oh, well, that's our West Virginia office." So I would definitely be aware of that, of looking into where exactly your practice area is based, and just by looking at where the attorneys are, that the majority of the attorneys that are in that practice group. So that is the main way I prepared.
Great, good advice. Great advice, Tyler. So what kind of questions did the interviewers ask during your interview?
So that was a year ago, so I don't remember necessarily all of them, but I would say there were kind of two forms of questions in just my experience with interviewing. There are the questions where I guess the company or the law firm already has their questions laid out that they ask everybody. And then there are more of the questions of just getting to know you. So the questions that are already laid out that they ask to everyone usually consisted of an example when you had to utilize teamwork, or an example when you had to multitask, or things like that. So for that, I kind of just already had a few scenarios that I always would go to and plug into certain situations. And then the other types of questions were mainly getting to know you. Why did you decide to go to law school? What law school? Why did you decide to go to your specific law school? And then I was also asked questions about specific things on my resume that I did not think that I was going to be asked about. So I was asked about a certain job that I had in undergrad, and it had nothing to do with law or anything, but I was asked about it. Luckily, I had kind of prepared, a 15, 20-second answer to talk about what I did at each of my jobs and everything on my resume. So I would say be prepared for that. The one question that I did receive that I was not prepared for was, what do you know about our specific firm? So I had picked what I was going to talk about regarding the practice area that I was interested in. But beyond that, I didn't really know that much about the firm. And it's actually the firm that I ended up at, Bailey Cavallari, that asked me that question. And now that I've worked there, I know that my answer was completely wrong. And I did not know what they did at all. Luckily, that didn't hurt me too much. But I would say just try to, find out about the firm that you're applying to, and not just their practice areas and what their focus is, and whether that's going on their LinkedIn and kind of seeing what they're posting, or going on their website and seeing what their core values are, different things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, good tips, Tyler. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question
yeah.
to that?
Yeah, go on ahead.
So Tyler, in this virtual setting, do you feel like you could have notes with you for each employer during the interview, so that if you can't remember everything, it's at least written in front of you?
So yeah, I did have notes. I tried not to look at them just because I felt like you could tell if you were looking down. But I did have notes for each employer that I was interviewing with and that I kind of went over beforehand. So I would say always have the notes, but also don't rely too much on them. So you're still engaged in the conversation, and it's not just you're answering questions.
Thank you.
Awesome. So you mentioned some things you might have done differently, but Was there anything else that you wish you would have done differently for your interviews?
I think the main thing I wish I had done differently, it would have been, to learn more about the firm in particular, not just a certain practice area. But then also, I mean, it's harder, it's easier said than done, but also just to, be more relaxed. Because I think in general, most of the people interviewing already know like what your capabilities are. They really just want to know if they like you. So I wish I had taken more time and been more relaxed to actually show my personality in my interviews rather than, being freaked out and not being able to really answer the questions.
Good advice. Great advice. And finally, did you send follow-up emails or letters, and how did you obtain contact information from the interviewers?
So I did send follow-up emails to everyone, except for one person. And how that happened was basically we were told probably in the skills workshop, make sure you get everybody's email so you can send up, a thank you email. And there were some employers that I guess didn't necessarily want to take the time and put it in the chat. So that was fine. I would say the hardest part is for the corporations. For government employees, it's pretty easy to find their email addresses. For law firms, it's also easy as long as you know their names. But for the corporations, it's kind of impossible to find because there's not just going to be a directory for all the nationwide attorneys that you can just find their email address. So luckily, the one that I did, that they did, like, not really want to put their email in the chat, I was able to find one person's email just by like Googling their name and like searching through a whole bunch of documents. And I was able to find that they were a facilitator for a certain workshop and their email address was included in that. However, the other person, the only thing I was able to find was their LinkedIn. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to send them a thank you note via email. But I would say, I wouldn't be as pressed about it if it is like, a government employee or a law firm, if they are reluctant to give their email, because you'll be able to find it. But I guess I would say probably press more for the corporations because their email address is going to be harder to find.
Okay. Thank you, Tyler. At this point, I just want to open it up. If the students on the call have a question for Tyler, feel free to put it in the chat.
And I also
unmute. Yeah, sorry.
A question via
ahead.
direct message. And basically the question was, do you feel like it's noticeable if your notes are on the computer and open in the next window next to you? I would say it's probably not noticeable. I think for the most part, if you're looking at the screen, you can tell, but sometimes you can also tell when you're reading something because you're pausing to process what you're reading. So that would probably be, a better option if you can, have the windows open and make sure that all your technology is like together than having it necessarily written down next to you.
Feel free to continue. Tyler, not sure if you see this question, but what was the practice area that you wanted to do?
So I still don't necessarily know what I want to do. So I kind of just had to base it on like going on their website and what seems interesting. One of the things that I remember that I talked about in your interview was products liability. And I think that might have been the one that their practice area wasn't in Columbus. I don't fully remember, but real estate, different things like that. I kind of just picked something that like I actually did find interesting. So if they asked me why I found it interesting, I could say, and it wasn't just, I was gaslighting them for the interview. So I would say definitely make sure it's something that you're actually interested in, or that you can see an interest in. But also, I definitely think when it comes to practice areas, everybody knows that even as 2Ls and 3Ls, we don't know what we want to do anyway. So if you don't have a specific practice area, kind of just pick something that might sound interesting. But I think everybody understands that you're going to change when you actually start doing the work. So I would say that's something to keep in mind.
Good advice. The next question, what kinds of things about the firm do you think interviewers want you to talk about in the interview if they ask?
I think just knowing, what their focus is. I tried to talk about, so the example I gave, I tried to talk about, what their main practice area was, and I did not understand it at all. So I would say like, be cautious on that. But I would say, talk about like, what their focus is in their, like on their like website. So if they're focused on community service, maybe talk about that they're a community service focused law firm. Or if their focus is on real estate and community development, talk about that. So I would say try to find those things, and that can be harder to do. I think another thing is just go and talk to people. If people at Ohio State or Capital, who are previous years, they probably talked to people at the firm. They might have interviewed with the firm. They might have even worked there. So I would say try to talk to people who can actually have an insight on those things.
I think that's great advice. The next question, since the interviews will be via Zoom, how early should we hop on to the meeting? Should it be right at the scheduled time or 5 to 10 minutes before? Donna, do you want to talk about the logistics? Or
I mean, I was just going to talk about.
Yeah, go on ahead.
From my experience, you log in to the CBA's Zoom, and then they'll place you in your rooms. And I think we got all that information of like how early you should be on. So
Tyler is 100% right. You want to come in, I would say at least 10 minutes early, because you want to be sure that you're not having any internet problems. When you come in early, we'll be able to take a look at all the things that Christian and Brigitte talked about this morning, and give you some last minute advice if your lighting looks strange or if something's going on. So when you come in to the interview, to the Zoom, we will actually have a student lounge breakout room. And so you'll come in, we'll put you in that student lounge. There'll be a couple of our committee members and staff in there to just sort of help you with any last minute logistics. And then we'll place you into the breakout room with your firm for your interview. So I would definitely say, even 15 minutes early. The earlier, the better. So you can just make sure you're there, you're comfortable, everything's working well, and we get you into the interview on time.
Feel free to ask any other questions in the chat if anyone has any.
I just want to add on to what Tyler said about knowing the firm and knowing something about them. So if a firm is like community service based, that's great that you know that and that you add that, but also in your response, do it value added and say, well, and this is what type of community service that I have done. Because the whole goal of the interview is to show that employer, not only that you're confident, but that you're relatable to their firm and their culture. So you want to make sure that you're adding value to the conversation and your skill set as well.
I have kind of a question. This just might be my own curiosity, and sort of Tyler, this for you and also for our co-chairs. Tyler mentioned that with one of the folks he interviewed with, he just couldn't track down their email, but saw them on LinkedIn. What do you all think about if you couldn't find an email? What do you think about sending a private message on someone's LinkedIn page to thank them for the interview? How do you think that would go over?
to me, I think in hindsight, I wish I had done that. I guess I felt at the time, I felt that it was like, a little too invasive that I went and found their LinkedIn. But in hindsight, I think I could have done that and it wouldn't have been that big of a deal because it wasn't like they were pretty easy to find on LinkedIn because they had a unique name. So it wasn't like I had to go through a whole bunch of John Smiths to find them. So yeah, I would say in hindsight, I do wish I had done that.
I think that goes again back to stylistic preference. My thought process, if they didn't give me their email address and I had to do all of that and I've asked for it, they still didn't give it to me, maybe I wouldn't send them a LinkedIn message. But as Tyler said, if you could easily find it on, a website and it's published, then yes, I'm going to send you a thank you email.
Yeah, for me, if I receive a message on LinkedIn, that's totally fine with me. However, yeah, if it was clear that I didn't share my email for a reason, that might be a time to not send a direct message, but generally, LinkedIn is just fine with me for sending a message. Any other questions?
I have another question for Tyler. So I know that you clerked at Bailey your first year. What about the experience made you want to come back for your second year?
I would say honestly, so going into working for a law firm, I honestly did not think I was gonna like it. You hear a lot of things about, what law firms are like, but I guess I would say that my expectations were definitely changed on law firms. And really it just came down to the people. Everybody was really open and nice and like willing to help you. But then also to realize that they had it wasn't just all work, they also had fun together, and you can tell the people that work there enjoy working with each other. And of course, like, it depends on like you as a person on what you like. I would say in a summer program they're going to do a lot, any law firm or any institution is going to do a lot of like outside stuff because they want you to get to know everybody. And so there is definitely a lot that you're doing where it's like every week there's an event, different things like that. But I definitely did enjoy getting to know everybody. And really it was the people and saying, that I can see myself working with these people long term.
That's great.
Another question came in through chat. How about general LinkedIn etiquette? Is it okay to reach out and connect with people if you think the interview went well? I'll let anyone answer that they want to, but I also think that's kind of a stylistic thing, as Brigitte has mentioned. It's going to be up to your personal preference. I think it's fine if I received a LinkedIn request from anyone that I interviewed with that, we seem to connect well in the interview.
Yeah, from real life experience, I had an interview. I didn't get the position, but a few weeks later, I did reach out to the interviewer, connected, and now they're a great mentor. So I would say if that is something that you want to do, I would recommend doing it after the 17th, just to give the employer time to get their offers out. But definitely, the law is all about networks and connecting. So I would encourage you to do that after the offer period is done.
No problem. Are there any last minute questions? We're probably going to end a little bit early. This is our last item, but we're happy to answer any other questions that people have now, and we will also be available as other questions come up during this process.
I have another one for Tyler, and Tyler, you answered this a little bit, but I just want to give you a sort of a second chance at it in case there's anything else you want to share with the group. Is there anything that now after you've been through a couple years here that you wish you knew when you were sitting back in the place that these students are today, you know, getting prepared for interviews?
So yeah, I definitely would say the thing that I wish I knew then that I know now is, I know it's a cliche that everybody says, like, it's not just them interviewing you, it's you interviewing them. I would definitely like take that to heart and see, you know, actually don't, if of course, if only one person offers you a job, you're gonna take that. But I would actually be concerned with, like, do I think I'll work well here? Do I like the people that like I'm talking to? Does it feel like they're authentic? I've definitely had interviews where it was like, after the fact, it was like, I don't know if I actually want to work there. So I would definitely say take the time to actually think about how you feel about the interview and not just wanting the job. So you can actually decide. I would say that's probably the most important thing, where you can decide whether I would be a good fit here. So I would say definitely like try to actually think about if you like it and not just looking at it from the perspective of a job. So I was through the minority clerkship program, I had one offer, but through another program, another interview that I had done, I also had another offer. And they just kind of lined up where I had to choose at the same time. So I was not necessarily faced with, you know, the same, I guess, deadline. I think I had been offered the first position, not through the minority clerkship program, a little before, and I had time to think about it. And basically I did base it on my experience with the interview. Neither interview was bad, and I liked both organizations, but I think it really just came down to where I thought I would have the better fit.
Okay, well, I think we will go on ahead and wrap up the formal portion of this workshop, but we'll stick around for the next, 5 minutes or so and answer questions if other people have questions. But other than that, that was all we had for you today.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you all. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Yes.
Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions.